When lightning strikes twice. The rain hammered against the windows of the small apartment in Brooklyn with relentless fury. Natalie Brooks gripped the edge of her bed, feeling another contraction rip through her body like wildfire. The digital clock on her nightstand glowed an angry red, 3:17 a.m. This was not supposed to happen tonight. Not for another 3 weeks. Not when she was completely alone. Her phone lay on the nightstand, and with trembling fingers, she reached for it. The screen blurred through her tears as she scrolled to find Carmen's number. Her best friend answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Natalie? What's wrong?" "The baby is coming," Natalie gasped, her words broken by pain. "Carmen, I think something is wrong. The contractions are so close together. I'm calling an ambulance right now. Stay on the line with me." Natalie nodded even though Carmen could not see her. Another wave of pain crashed over her, and she cried out. This was nothing like what the birthing classes had described. This was urgent, primal, and terrifying. The hospital she swore to avoid. Within 15 minutes, paramedics were loading her into an ambulance. The female paramedic, a kind woman with gentle hands, checked her vital signs while the vehicle screamed through the empty New York streets. "Which hospital are we heading to?" Natalie managed to ask. "Metropolitan General. It's the closest facility with a level 3 NICU. Your baby might need extra care if he's coming this early." Natalie's heart stopped. Metropolitan General. The one place in all of New York City she had desperately tried to avoid. The place where her ex-husband worked. The place where their marriage had slowly crumbled under the weight of impossible schedules and unspoken resentments. "No, please, take me anywhere else. I can pay for a private hospital." The paramedic shook her head firmly. "Ma'am, your baby's heart rate is showing some stress. We don't have time to drive across the city. Metropolitan General is 3 minutes away." Natalie closed her eyes and felt hot tears stream down her cheeks. After 8 months of carefully avoiding every place Jonathan might be, fate was dragging her straight to his doorstep at her most vulnerable moment. Ghosts in the hallways. The emergency entrance of Metropolitan General was blazing with fluorescent lights. Natalie was rushed through automatic doors and down hallways that felt hauntingly familiar. She had walked these corridors every day for 5 years, had shared coffee breaks in the staff room, had celebrated birthdays and mourned losses with colleagues who had become family. "We need an OB immediately," someone shouted. "Patient is 37 weeks, presenting with rapid labor progression." A nurse Natalie did not recognize wheeled her into a delivery room. The space smelled of antiseptic and fresh linens. Medical equipment beeped and hummed around her. Through the pain, Natalie felt a strange sense of coming full circle. "Dr. Walsh is in emergency surgery," another voice called from the hallway. "Dr. Anderson is at Lenox Hill with a complicated delivery." "Who else is on call?" There was a pause that seemed to stretch for eternity. "Dr. Pierce just finished a consult in cardiology. He's still in the building." Natalie's eyes flew open. "No. Not him. Anyone but him." The nurse looked at her with confusion and sympathy. "Ma'am, I understand you might have a preference, but your baby needs to be delivered now. Dr. Pierce is one of the finest doctors in this hospital." "You don't understand," Natalie sobbed. "He's my ex-husband. When past meets present." The door opened, and time seemed to slow down. Jonathan Pierce walked into the delivery room with the confident stride of a man who had performed this procedure hundreds of times. He was wearing navy blue scrubs, his dark hair slightly messed up, and those piercing blue eyes that had once looked at her with such love. Their eyes met, and Natalie watched as recognition dawned across his face. The professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing shock, confusion, and something that looked painfully like longing. "Natalie," he breathed, her name a prayer and a question all at once. "Jonathan." Her voice broke on his name. For a moment, neither of them moved. The nurses glanced between them, sensing the electric tension that filled the room. Then another contraction seized Natalie, and she cried out in pain. The sound snapped Jonathan back into doctor mode. "How far apart are the contractions?" he asked, his voice steady and professional as he approached. 2 minutes, the nurse replied. Jonathan moved to examine her, and Natalie felt his hands, so familiar yet so foreign, gentle and sure. "Natalie, I need you to listen to me. I know this is difficult, but right now I'm your doctor, and you're my patient. Can you trust me to help you?" She looked into his eyes and saw genuine concern there. Whatever had broken between them, she knew he would never let his personal feelings compromise her care or their baby's safety. "Yes," she whispered. "The baby arrives." What happened next was a blur of pain, pressure, and Jonathan's steady voice guiding her through each push. Despite the complicated history between them, they worked together with an unexpected harmony. He anticipated her needs before she voiced them, knew exactly when to encourage and when to simply be present. "You're doing great, Natalie. One more push. I can see the head." With a final surge of strength she didn't know she possessed, Natalie pushed. The sound of a baby's cry filled the room, strong and healthy and absolutely perfect. "It's a boy," Jonathan announced, his voice catching slightly. Natalie collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and overwhelmed. "Is he okay? Is my baby okay?" "He's perfect," Jonathan said, but his voice sounded strange. Distant. Natalie lifted her head to see Jonathan holding her son, and she watched as his face transformed. He was staring at the baby with an intensity that went beyond professional assessment. His hands trembled slightly as he examined the tiny features. The baby had a distinctive birthmark on his left shoulder, the same crescent moon shape that Jonathan had. The same dark hair. The same shape to his ears. "Natalie," Jonathan's voice was barely a whisper. "When did you conceive?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Natalie felt her heart racing, not from labor this time, but from fear. She watched Jonathan's face as he did the mental calculation, watched as realization dawned in his eyes. "He's mine," Jonathan said, and it wasn't a question. "This baby is mine." Secrets in the delivery room. The silence that followed Jonathan's declaration was deafening. Natalie could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, could feel the weight of 8 months of secrets pressing down on her chest. The nurses had quietly stepped back, sensing this was a moment that belonged to the two of them alone. "Natalie, answer me." Jonathan's voice was raw with emotion. He still held the baby, their son, cradled against his chest. "Is this my child?" She wanted to lie. God, how she wanted to lie. To tell him he was wrong, that she had moved on, that this baby belonged to someone else. But as she looked at her son, at the undeniable features that mirrored his father, she knew the truth had always been inevitable. "Yes," she whispered, the word barely audible. "He's yours." Jonathan's knees seemed to buckle. A nurse quickly pulled a chair behind him, and he sank into it, still clutching the baby. His eyes were fixed on the tiny face, memorizing every detail. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me? 8 months, Natalie. 8 months you carried my child and didn't say a word." The weight of the past. Natalie closed her eyes, feeling exhaustion wash over her. The physical ordeal of childbirth was nothing compared to the emotional reckoning she now faced. "Because I was afraid," she admitted. "I was terrified, Jonathan." "Terrified of what?" "Of me?" He looked up at her, hurt etched across his features. "Did you really think I wouldn't want to be a father?" "No," she said quickly. "I was afraid you'd come back out of obligation. That you'd sacrifice your happiness and your career because you felt you had to, not because you wanted to." Jonathan stood up slowly, moving closer to her bed. The baby had quieted, nestled against his father's chest as if he belonged there. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." Natalie took a shaky breath. "Do you remember our last night together? Before the divorce papers were filed?" Jonathan's expression darkened. "Of course I remember. We had the worst fight of our marriage. I said things I didn't mean. You said you were done trying. I left the next morning while you were in surgery," Natalie continued, her voice thick with tears. "I went to stay with Carmen. 3 weeks later, I realized I was late. I took a test, and it was positive. The breaking point: why didn't you call me right away?" Jonathan asked, his tone desperate to understand. "Because that same week, I saw you at a medical conference," Natalie said, wiping her eyes. "You looked happy for the first time in months. You were laughing with colleagues, networking, thriving. Without me, you were finally the doctor you always wanted to be. Not the husband torn between his career and his failing marriage." Jonathan set the baby gently in the warming bassinet beside the bed, then turned to face her fully. "That's not fair, Natalie. You didn't get to make that choice for me." "I know," she sobbed. "I know it wasn't fair. But Jonathan, our marriage was drowning. We barely spoke without fighting. You worked 80-hour weeks and came home too exhausted to even look at me. I felt like a ghost in my own life. So you just disappeared? Took my child and erased me from the equation?" The anger in his voice was like a slap, but Natalie knew she deserved it. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought if I raised the baby alone, you could have the career you wanted without resentment. Without feeling trapped." Memories and regrets. Jonathan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she remembered from countless difficult conversations. "You want to know what I remember about our last night? Not just the fight. I remember coming back to the apartment at 2 in the morning. You were asleep on the couch, and I stood there watching you, thinking about how badly I'd messed everything up." Natalie looked at him, surprised. "You came back?" "I always came back," he said softly. "Even when I left angry, I always came back. That night, I climbed onto that couch with you, and you woke up. We didn't talk. We just held each other, and then we made love like it was the last time we'd ever touch each other. Because we both knew it was," Natalie whispered. "We both knew we were saying goodbye. But I didn't want to say goodbye." Jonathan's voice broke. "The next morning, I was going to tell you I'd quit. That I'd find a position with normal hours, that I'd choose you over everything else. But when I got home from that surgery, you were gone." Natalie stared at him, her heart shattering. "What?" "I spent 2 months trying to find you. Carmen wouldn't tell me where you were. Your phone was disconnected. It was like you'd vanished." He laughed bitterly. "I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that kept me from falling apart. A father's first moments." The baby started to fuss, and instinctively, both of them reached for him. Their hands touched over the bassinet, and they froze. The electricity between them was undeniable, even after everything. "Can I hold him?" Natalie asked softly. Jonathan carefully lifted their son and placed him in her arms. As she cradled the baby against her chest, Jonathan sat on the edge of the bed, unable to look away from them. "What's his name?" Jonathan asked. "Tyler," Natalie said. "Tyler Brooks. I was going to use your last name, Pierce, but I was afraid you'd find out somehow." "Tyler," Jonathan repeated, testing the name. "It's perfect." He reached out tentatively, stroking the baby's soft cheek with one finger. "He's so small. So perfect." "He has your eyes," Natalie said, watching Jonathan's face. "Well, the shape of them, at least. And that birthmark on his shoulder, it's identical to yours." Jonathan pulled down the collar of his scrub slightly, revealing the crescent moon birthmark he'd been born with. "My mother always said it was good luck. That it meant I was destined for something special." He looked at Tyler with wonder. Maybe she was right. The hard questions for several minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, both focused on the miracle between them. Then Jonathan spoke again, his voice serious. Natalie, I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She looked up at him, nervous. Okay. During these 8 months, when you were pregnant and alone, did you ever want to tell me? Even once? Natalie bit her lip, fighting back tears. Every single day, she admitted. Every ultrasound, every milestone, every kick. I'd pick up my phone to call you and then talk myself out of it. I convinced myself I was being noble, setting you free. But the truth is, I was just scared. Scared of what? Scared that you'd reject us. Scared that you'd resent me for trapping you. Scared that history would repeat itself and we'd end up right back where we were, miserable and hurting each other. She looked down at Tyler. But mostly, I was scared that you wouldn't love him the way he deserves to be loved. Jonathan's jaw clenched. You really thought that? That I could look at my own child and not love him with everything in me? Our marriage fell apart because we couldn't communicate, Jonathan. Because you buried yourself in work and I felt invisible. I didn't want Tyler to grow up feeling the same way I did, always competing with a hospital for his father's attention. The breaking dawn, the accusation hung in the air between them. Jonathan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city as dawn began to break over the skyline. The room was bathed in soft golden light. You're right, he said finally, his back still to her. About everything. I was a terrible husband. I prioritized my career over our relationship. I let you feel invisible when you should have been the center of my world. Natalie hadn't expected that. Jonathan, he turned to face her. But Natalie, if you had told me about Tyler, everything would have been different. Not because of obligation, but because you would have given me a reason to change. A reason bigger than my ego or my career. How can you be sure? Because losing you destroyed me, he said simply. For 8 months, I've been a shell of a person. I go through the motions at work, I come home to an empty apartment, and I wonder every single day what I could have done differently. This baby, our son, he's not a burden or a trap. He's a miracle. Natalie felt tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I was just running away from my fears. Jonathan crossed back to the bed and knelt beside it, taking her free hand in both of his. We both made mistakes. We both let pride and fear drive us apart. But Natalie, we have a chance now. A chance to do this right. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to be Tyler's father. Not just on weekends or holidays, but every day. I want to be there for his first words, his first steps, every moment. He paused, his eyes intense. And I want another chance with you. Natalie's breath caught. Jonathan, we can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened. I'm not asking to pick up where we left off, he said firmly. I'm asking to start over. To build something new, something stronger. Something based on honesty and communication, not on the broken foundation of who we used to be. A glimmer of hope. Before Natalie could respond, Tyler started crying in earnest. She adjusted him, trying to soothe him, and Jonathan stood up. He's probably hungry. Should I call the nurse? No, I want to try feeding him myself. Natalie felt suddenly shy. Could you give me some privacy? Jonathan nodded and turned his back while she positioned Tyler to nurse. After a moment of fumbling, the baby latched on, and she felt a surge of relief and joy. Okay, you can turn around now. Jonathan turned and his expression softened at the sight of mother and child. He sat back down on the edge of the bed, close but not crowding them. You're amazing, you know that? Doing all of this alone. Carrying him, preparing for him, everything. I had Carmen, Natalie said. She's been my rock through all of this. I'm grateful to her for being there when I couldn't be, Jonathan said. But I'm here now, Natalie. And I'm not going anywhere. Whether you decide to give us another chance or not, I'm going to be the father Tyler deserves. I promise you that. Natalie looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. This wasn't the overwhelmed, distant man she'd left 8 months ago. This was someone who had been broken down and rebuilt, someone who understood what truly mattered. I believe you, she said softly. And Jonathan, I want to try. I'm terrified, but I want to try. His face lit up with hope so pure it took her breath away. Yeah. But we do this slowly. We figure out how to be parents first. We learn how to communicate without hurting each other. And if we can do that, maybe we can find our way back to each other. Jonathan leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Slow is good. Slow is perfect. As long as I get to be part of this, part of Tyler's life and yours, I'll wait as long as you need. As the morning sun filled the delivery room with warm light, the three of them sat together, a family taking its first fragile steps toward healing and hope, when morning brings clarity. 3 hours later, Natalie had been moved to a private recovery room. Jonathan had pulled strings to get her the best suite in the maternity ward, complete with a view of Central Park and a comfortable couch that converted into a bed. Tyler slept peacefully in his bassinet beside her, wrapped in soft blue blankets. Natalie watched Jonathan on his phone, pacing by the window. He'd been making calls for the past 20 minutes, his voice low but urgent. Finally, he ended the call and turned to her with a satisfied expression. All set, he announced. All set with what? I've cleared my schedule for the next month. Dr. Hayes is taking over my surgeries, and I've arranged for family leave. Natalie sat up straighter in bed, wincing slightly. Jonathan, you can't just abandon your patients for a month. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm prioritizing my family for the first time in my life. He sat down in the chair beside her bed. Besides, Dr. Hayes is one of the best cardiac surgeons in the country. My patients are in excellent hands. But your career will still be there in a month, Jonathan interrupted gently. Natalie, I meant what I said. Things are going to be different this time. I can't change the past, but I can control what I do right now, today. Before Natalie could respond, there was a knock at the door. Carmen burst into the room like a whirlwind, her dark curls bouncing as she rushed to Natalie's bedside. I got here as fast as I could. The flights from Boston were all delayed, and then traffic was insane, and she stopped abruptly when she saw Jonathan. Oh. Hello, Carmen, Jonathan said evenly. Carmen's eyes narrowed. What is he doing here? He delivered the baby, Natalie said quickly. And he knows, Carmen. He knows Tyler is his. Carmen's expression shifted from suspicion to concern. She sat on the edge of Natalie's bed, taking her friend's hand. Are you okay? Did he pressure you into anything? I'm fine, Natalie assured her. We talked. Really talked, for the first time in over a year. And? Carmen looked between them skeptically. And we're going to try again, Jonathan said. Slowly, carefully, but we're going to try to be a family. Carmen studied him with the intensity of a protective older sister. If you hurt her again, if you make her feel invisible or unimportant, I will personally make sure every hospital in New York knows what kind of man you really are. Carmen. Natalie gasped. But Jonathan just nodded solemnly. I understand. And I deserve that warning. But I promise you, I'm not the same man I was 8 months ago. Losing Natalie taught me what really matters, and now that I have a son, I'm not going to waste this second chance. Carmen held his gaze for a long moment, then seemed to relax slightly. Okay. But I'm watching you, Dr. Pierce. The grand gesture. As if on cue, there was another knock at the door. This time, Dr. Robert Hayes entered, followed by a small group of hospital staff. Dr. Hayes was in his late 50s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had witnessed countless miracles in his decades at Metropolitan General. "Dr. Pierce, is everything ready?" he asked with a mysterious smile. "Almost," Jonathan replied. He turned to Natalie, suddenly looking nervous. "Natalie, there's something I need to do. Something I should have done a long time ago." "What are you talking about?" Natalie felt her heart begin to race. Jonathan walked to the bassinet and gently picked up Tyler, who was still sleeping peacefully. He cradled his son against his chest with a natural ease that surprised everyone in the room. Then he turned back to Natalie. "8 months ago, I let you walk out of my life because I was too proud and too stupid to fight for us. I told myself that if you really loved me, you wouldn't leave. But the truth is, if I really loved you the way you deserved, you never would have wanted to leave in the first place." Natalie felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Jonathan, what are you doing?" "I'm fighting for us." Finally. He took a deep breath. "Natalie Brooks, you are the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known. You carried our child alone, prepared to be a single mother, all because you wanted to protect me from feeling obligated. That's the kind of selfless love I took for granted." Dr. Hayes smiled knowingly and nodded to someone in the hallway. Suddenly, music began playing softly from a portable speaker, a jazz version of the song that had played at their wedding 5 years ago. "These last 8 months without you have been the darkest of my life," Jonathan continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I'd lost you forever. But somehow, miraculously, fate brought you back to me in this delivery room. And when I held our son for the first time, when I saw your eyes looking back at me from his tiny face, I knew I'd been given the greatest gift in the world." Tears were flowing freely down Natalie's cheeks now. Carmen squeezed her hand supportively. Jonathan carefully transferred Tyler to Dr. Hayes, who cradled the baby with practiced ease. Then Jonathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Natalie's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, different from her original engagement ring but somehow even more beautiful. "This isn't your old ring," Jonathan explained, kneeling beside her bed. "That ring represented who we were, the promises we made when we were younger and more naive. This ring represents who we are now, who we can become together. The question that changes everything." "Natalie," he said, his voice strong despite the emotion in his eyes, "I know I hurt you. I know I failed you as a husband. I know that I have to earn back your trust. But I also know that I love you more than I ever have, and I love our son with a fierceness that terrifies and exhilarates me." He took her hand gently. "I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm not asking you to forget the past or pretend everything is perfect. What I'm asking is for the chance to prove to you that I can be the partner you need, the father Tyler deserves, and the man worthy of your love." Natalie was sobbing openly now, and Carmen was discreetly wiping her own eyes. "Will you give me that chance?" Jonathan asked. "Will you let me spend every day showing you that I've changed? That we can build something stronger from the broken pieces of what we had?" The room was silent except for Natalie's quiet crying and the soft jazz music. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for her answer. "You hurt me so badly," Natalie finally said, her voice shaking. "You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like your career would always matter more than us." "I know," Jonathan said, not defending himself. "And I will spend the rest of my life making up for that if you'll let me." Natalie looked at Tyler, sleeping peacefully in Dr. Hayes's arms. Then she looked at Carmen, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. Finally, she looked back at Jonathan, at the man who had broken her heart and who was now offering to help her heal it. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm terrified of going through that pain again." "Me too," Jonathan said honestly. "But I'm more terrified of not trying. Of letting fear keep me from the two people I love most in this world." Natalie took a shaky breath. Okay. Okay? Jonathan's eyes widened with hope. Okay, I'll give you that chance. I'll give us that chance. She smiled through her tears. But Jonathan, if we do this, we do it right. Couples therapy, honest communication, and Tyler comes first. Always. Always, Jonathan agreed fervently. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. I promise you, Natalie, I will never make you feel invisible again. You and Tyler, you're my whole world now. He stood and carefully took Tyler back from Dr. Hayes, then sat on the edge of the bed beside Natalie. She leaned against him, exhausted but happy, as they both gazed down at their son. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. Well, I think this calls for a celebration. Congratulations to the Pierce family, reunited and stronger than ever. The small group of staff applauded softly, mindful of the sleeping baby. Carmen moved closer and wrapped her arms around both Natalie and Jonathan. You two better not mess this up again, she whispered, but her voice was warm with affection. Building a new foundation. After everyone had left and they were alone again, Jonathan carefully placed Tyler back in his bassinet. Then he lay down on the bed beside Natalie, both of them on their sides, facing each other. Tell me about the pregnancy, he said softly. Tell me everything I missed. So Natalie did. She told him about the morning sickness that lasted all day, about the first ultrasound where she saw Tyler's heartbeat and cried for an hour. She told him about feeling the first kicks while she was grocery shopping, about setting up the nursery in her tiny apartment with Carmen's help. She told him about the fears that kept her awake at night, worrying she was making a terrible mistake by not telling him. Jonathan listened to every word, his hand resting on her hip, occasionally reaching over to touch Tyler's tiny hand through the bassinet bars. When she finished, he kissed her forehead gently. Thank you for sharing that with me. I hate that I missed it, but I'm grateful you're letting me in now. What about you? Natalie asked. What were these 8 months like for you? Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Empty, he said finally. I worked constantly because it was the only thing that kept me from thinking about you. I moved to a new apartment because our old one had too many memories. I went through the motions of living without actually being alive. Did you date anyone? Natalie asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's none of my business. No, it's a fair question. Jonathan shook his head. I went on 2 dates, both arranged by well-meaning colleagues. I spent both evenings comparing the women to you and left early. No one else even came close. Natalie felt a warm flutter in her chest. I didn't date anyone either. I told myself it was because of the pregnancy, but really, I wasn't ready to let you go. They lay there in comfortable silence, watching their son sleep. Tyler made small noises in his sleep, his tiny fists clenching and unclenching. Every movement felt like a miracle. What do we tell people? Natalie asked suddenly. About us, about Tyler? The truth, Jonathan said simply. That we're a family finding our way back to each other. That we made mistakes but we're committed to doing better. And work? Will you go back to the hospital after your leave? Yes, but with strict boundaries. Regular hours, no more 80-hour weeks. Dr. Hayes and I have already discussed it. They're restructuring the cardiology department to ensure better work-life balance for all the doctors. Natalie looked at him skeptically. You really think you can stick to that? You love your work. I do love my work, Jonathan admitted. But I love you and Tyler more. And I've learned that being a great doctor doesn't mean sacrificing everything else. It means finding balance, knowing when to say no, and remembering why I went into medicine in the first place, to help people, including my own family. The promise of tomorrow. As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting golden light across the room, Natalie felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Real, tangible hope for the future. We should probably call your parents, she said suddenly. They deserve to know they have a grandson. Jonathan's face brightened. They're going to lose their minds. Mom has been pestering me about grandchildren for years. And they won't be upset about the circumstances? Are you kidding? They adored you. When we split up, my mother called me every week to ask if I'd come to my senses yet. He smiled. They're going to be thrilled. Over the next hour, they made calls together. Jonathan's parents screamed with joy over speakerphone, his mother crying happy tears and his father demanding to know when they could fly in from Chicago. Natalie's own parents, who lived in upstate New York, were equally ecstatic and promised to visit the next day. As evening approached, a nurse brought dinner for both of them. They ate together on the hospital bed, Tyler sleeping peacefully between them, and talked about everything from baby gear to potential middle names to the logistics of combining their lives again. I want to do this right, Natalie said as they finished eating. I want us to go to therapy together, really work through our issues before we rush into anything. Absolutely, Jonathan agreed. I've actually already been seeing a therapist for the past few months. Dr. Patricia Chen. She specializes in work-life balance and relationship issues. Maybe you could join me for some sessions? Natalie was impressed. The old Jonathan never would have considered therapy. I'd like that. And I want to be involved in everything with Tyler. Doctor's appointments, midnight feedings, diaper changes, all of it. Even the explosive poops? Natalie teased. Jonathan laughed. Especially those. I'm a surgeon, remember? I can handle bodily fluids. As night fell over the city, Jonathan climbed onto the bed beside Natalie, and they curled up together with Tyler between them. For the first time in 8 months, Natalie felt complete. Her family, broken and scattered, was finally coming back together. Hey Natalie. Jonathan whispered in the darkness. Yeah. Thank you. For Tyler, for this second chance, for not giving up on us completely. She turned her head to kiss him softly. Thank you for fighting for us. For becoming the man I always knew you could be. Tyler stirred slightly, and both parents immediately focused on him, watching as he settled back into sleep. In that moment, surrounded by the two people she loved most in the world, Natalie knew they were going to be okay. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be challenges ahead, but they were committed to facing them together. As she drifted off to sleep, Natalie smiled. Their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning again, this time with a stronger foundation built on honesty, communication, and the unconditional love they both felt for the tiny miracle sleeping between them. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of sirens reminded them that life goes on, that every ending is also a beginning, and that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that have to fall apart before they can truly come together. The Pierce family was far from perfect, but they were together. And that, Natalie thought as sleep finally claimed her, was all that really mattered.